Brittany, I am so glad to be sharing this moment with you.
I'm so glad to be with you. I'm always glad to be with you.
Well, I have missed being in your presence.
Likewise.
I see you on
honored.
the telly. I get to see you on the telly, and I'm like, yes, that's my girl.
I mean, I've been watching you my whole life,
Okay.
so I am so humbled every time I get the chance to spend time with you.
Well.
And especially in this, I don't know if you remember, the last time I was in this building was during the 2016 elections.
Oh.
And a number of activists from around the country,
yes.
we were rightfully demanding audience with our candidates.
Yes.
And you made sure that we could come into this building.
That's right.
And meet with Secretary Clinton.
That's right.
And you set up that meeting, you had us up in the conference room, you made sure that we were prepared, that we were taken care of. You've been opening doors for us forever.
Well, I remember that moment like it was yesterday.
Yeah.
So when I knew we were going to have a chance to do it here at the headquarters
Yes.
of the National Council of Negro Women,
Yes.
it was like coming full circle today.
I love it.
You know, but I have to say something to you.
Yes, ma'am.
I mean, I think I know you, right? And I followed your career. I feel like I helped raise you.
You did, and I'm grateful.
But I'm reading your bio. I mean, I'm really reading it. And I see, you know, I know you've been so active on the political side, voting rights, you know, what you did, championing the whole policy, legislative area around Breonna Taylor. I mean, you have just been out there.
Thank you.
But so seldom do I see in a young black woman's resume that one of my issues is equal pay. I mean,
Oh, absolutely.
It just doesn't show up that way. So I want to know from you, you know, what got you on the economic side of us as a people, even to focus in, because you know that's my passion,
I know
right?
it's your passion. And I think that honestly, I was raised by two people who helped me understand that the holistic freedom of Black people is what mattered. So it was going to be about our spiritual liberation. It was going to be about our physical liberation. It is going to be about our mental liberation. And it's going to be about our economic liberation. And that the points of access that we have to make sure that our families are taken care of for generations, that's what we deserve. That we shouldn't have to beg anybody for that. I was also raised by two parents where often my mom made more than my dad. And so we were never afraid to talk about money. We were never made to feel ashamed or embarrassed by that topic, because if we were gonna understand our own power, then we should always be ready to demand what we're owed and what we deserve. And I think that far too often we just are afraid to have that conversation, especially as Black women. And you've dedicated your career intentionally to Black women, from Mobile, Alabama, to the National Council of Negro Women, to your time in the administration. You have paid us such careful and close attention. I know that couldn't have been an easy choice. I'm sure lots of people tried to get you off of that.
Oh, very definitely. You know, and as you were talking about how we don't talk about it in the context of our families, it's so true.
Yeah.
And a part of the reason, I think, is because we just didn't have the options. We didn't have the experience, the exposure to teach our children, you know? So our own conversations were limited because of our heritage and our experience.
Yeah.
But my daddy said to me one day, and I'll never forget it. I didn't understand it when he said it, because I was, you know, a teenager growing up in Alabama. And he came out of the movement too, but he said to me, Alexis, always remember that one's bravery is in proportion to one's options.
Wow.
And over the years, as I began to internalize that, when you talk about all these areas of liberation, I chose the economic path. Because when I think about creating options for our people, it was about economic empowerment. And when I learned, as I saw in your resume, that you honed in on the pay equity issue for Black women, I remember where I was and the age I was when I first even knew it existed. I was 29 years old. I had just been named the director of the Women's Bureau by Jimmy Carter.
Right.
So all of a sudden, I'm really pouring myself into data.
Right.
trying to understand the landscape of women. Little did I know that black women would, I mean, I knew we were there as maids and cooks and we weren't in the labor market really.
Right.
I had no appreciation for the pay gap that existed then and it still exists today, right?
It still exists today.
It still exists today.
And I'm glad that people are finally having that conversation, I think, especially in the context of COVID.
Right, exactly.
Right? This conversation about pay equity for women, but in particular for black women,
That's right.
has everything to do with the fact that black women make up a disproportionate amount of essential workers, frontline workers, grocery stores, restaurants, food service industries, hospitals. You know, we're nurses, we're doctors, we're wait staff, we are domestic workers. So many of the women in our community have been protecting us from the worst of this pandemic.
Exactly.
And suddenly people have been being forced to say, well, black women have always been essential. So now how are you gonna pay us like that?
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah. And it gives credibility now to build the coalitions that we have to do to do something real for the first time, I believe, to close that gap.
Hatred on the streets, a horrific scene, a white nationalist rally that descended into deadly violence.
White people are losing their damn minds.
As an angry pro-Trump mob storms the U.S. Capitol, we've seen shooting.
We're about to see the rise of what I call white minority resistance. We have seen white folks in this country who simply cannot tolerate black folks voting.
I think what we're seeing is the inevitable result of violent denial.
This is part of American history. Every time that people of color have made progress, whether real or symbolic, there has been what Carol Anderson at Emory University calls white rage as a backlash.
This is the rise of the Proud Boys and the Boogaloo Boys. America, there's going to be more of this.
Here's all the Proud Boys, guys.
This country is getting increasingly racist in its behaviors and its attitudes because of the fear of white people.
The fear that they're taking our jobs, they're taking our resources, they're taking our women. This is white fear.
It's interesting sitting here in this building. I learned so many lessons from Dorothy Height, who mentored me beginning at the age of 24.
Right.
But she always said to me, you know, if you're going to make a big difference for the common good, but especially for us as black women, we have to lead the way, we have to teach others, and we have to pick partners who will understand the journey with us. She would always say, just because you get it, it doesn't mean everybody else gets it. And just because you know it's the right thing to do, it doesn't mean everybody else is going to embrace that principle. So our job is to educate and enroll. So when you say that to me, I look now at the various coalitions that are out there in the social justice movement. I look at this whole question of COVID, as you said, where parity for workers, especially for the women, for black women who are on the front lines. It's a conversation you can have now for education purposes, okay? And then to take it to the next step and say, now, this is how you can help specifically.
That's right.
And the specifics right now are not just where you are in your own companies, your own corporations, raising the question, not being afraid to talk about your pay, your salaries in your work environment, which most of us don't do, okay? So you don't have a sense of the whole. But to know that there is federal legislation now that is going to focus finally, I think, on this question of pay gap. And it's not just the salary, but it's the other things that go with it.
That's right.
It's the child care support.
Mm-hmm.
It's paid leave. I mean, there are a whole number of issues that have to support us as women if we're gonna close that gap. You know?
This is the point, right? Again, that holistic liberation, making sure that we can live thriving lives.
Right.
I mean, we spent generations surviving.
Exactly.
So that the next generation could survive.
Exactly.
And the last generation is always hoping that the next generation will thrive a little bit more than they did. I mean, you know, you're sitting right in front of a portrait of your mentor, of Dorothy Height, which, I mean, goodness, she mentored so many directly and indirectly, right? But I look at her, I look at you, and I think about what the promise of thriving is, and that is actually our divine promise, that we deserve that.
We deserve it.
We deserve that.
Yeah, but you know what it starts with, Brittany? You have to have, first of all, that belief.
Yeah.
That you deserve it.
Yeah.
You have to have that confidence, you know, and you have to have that vision that's really larger than yourselves to know that you can walk in this space, right? You know, because so often, I've never been one to go along to get along, right?
We know this.
But you really do have to know that if you're gonna be a pioneer, if you're gonna step out there, it's not a comfortable place all the time, right? But nothing happens without taking those risks. And you have to keep surrounding yourself with positive people who believe in you, who will keep encouraging you to keep pushing us forward, because that's the thrive you're talking about. I mean, that's the thrive, right?
How do you, I mean, I feel like so often we talk about firsts and trailblazers without thinking critically about the cost that comes with. I mean, blazing trails means literally that there was not one beforehand. So you have to dig out all the dirt. You have to find the right pathway. You have to make the mistakes to realize we can't go left here. This is where you have to go right. I mean, you blaze trails your entire career, and then you are the first Black woman to sit in this position, not just of any cabinet secretary, but Secretary of Labor, which has everything to do with our ability to thrive and survive. How did you make space for your thriving while you were busy blazing trails in seemingly impossible places? Because we just never talk about the weight of that.
Yeah, you know, it's interesting. You know, I have learned over the years that for me personally, my formula has been, first of all, you have to be willing to take risk. I happen to believe that leaders are not born, that they're shaped by circumstances and by the people and events, okay? And so you have to be willing to take that risk to step into that gap, okay? But it's not about taking the risk. It's about getting into the habit of risk-taking. Because when you do that, when you create that habit in yourself, you know, the butterflies start to diminish. You know, the questioning in your mind starts to become less. You say, well, I did that before, you know? So it's a mindset you start to develop when you get into the habit of risk-taking.
I love that.
Yeah, you know? And I'd say the second thing when you talk about what it means to be a pioneer, and it goes back to something Dr. Height taught me a long time ago. When you're the only woman, the only African American, a lot of times for me, the only Black woman in the room, I sit there and talk to myself a lot. I have a right to be here. You know, and I know that I do bring everybody else in with me. I'm conscious of that. I'm conscious it's not just about me sitting at the table, but I'm opening the doors for other sisters to walk in. And so I carry myself in a way so that I am conscious that I'm just the first here, but there's gonna be 2 and 3 and 4. And then I find ways to teach and coach others about what those experiences are like. You know, I look at you, you're married.
I am.
A new bride, okay? And you say, how do you do it? You know, I came up in that generation. My mother said I was cause and purpose. You'll never get a husband, okay? And I did marry very late because I was so dedicated to my work. But you do have to make that time to nourish your soul, to let yourself be loved and taken care of by others. And so for me to see you in that space that you're in right now,
thank you.
And to know that you're doing it both, you're not making a choice. I made a choice. But this generation doesn't have to do that. I want you to tell me how that feels for you, because I want others to be encouraged by just your personal walk and that choice you made.
Oh, that's so sweet. You know, I mean, I feel so much gratitude at this point in my life. I feel gratitude that women like you made it so that we didn't have to make the choice, right? That you made sacrifices and tough choices so that we wouldn't have quite so difficult a choice. I feel grateful for an increasing number of men who are finding themselves stretching beyond the boundaries of the expectations of masculinity. So this idea that I make all the money and I make all the decisions and you stay home and do this and I'm out in the world and I do that, that kind of machismo, if you will, is becoming less and less the standard. And so I met my husband, Reggie, on the streets of protest.
Wow.
So I knew we had a values alignment immediately, because you're out here taking the risks, right? And then we became friends, and I found out that he's funny and joyful and loves the Lord, which is the big one, especially when you raised in my house. And who, to your point, wanted nothing more than simply to make sure that I was taken care of. And I just believe everybody should be able to experience love like that. That kind of love that you grow into, that you grow up in instead of falling into. So affirming, and I think that for everyone, however you get it, whomever it comes from, whether it's romantic, from a friend, from your family, everybody deserves that kind of affirming, protective, safe, supportive, and encouraging love. Because I've never felt like I had to be small. And there are so many spaces in which I constantly felt like I had to fight against the urge to shrink myself because I was being pushed to shrink myself for that, is the implication.
Exactly.
So, we're not supposed to wear the bright colors. We're not supposed to wear our hair however we want. We're not, for a long time.
It's all about the fit.
All about the fit. All about the fit.
And wearing the mask.
And wearing the mask, right? And existing behind that mask. It's hard to breathe back there. But I'm trying to live. I'm trying to breathe. I'm trying to thrive.
Right, exactly.
I don't have time to wear this mask.
Right.
And so to your point about building habits, if I can build the habit of not wearing the mask at home, then it's a lot easier to go out into the world and say, well, I don't have to wear the mask here either. Do you feel like you are seeing the fruits of your labor when you talk about investing in future generations, coaching and leading other people? Do you feel like you're seeing that come to fruition, or is there more for us to do?
Oh, there's so much more for us to do. There's so much more. And, I look at the issues, and whether it's voting rights, you call it out, okay? And it feels like, my Lord, we've been at this forever, okay? And the struggle continues, and it continues in different ways, right? Your work that you're doing with police brutality and being on the front lines there, it's a different level now from our generation, right? But I'd say first, the disappointment for me is that in many ways, I feel sometimes we're not making any progress because we're still fighting the same fights.
Yeah.
We're still having to do what Dr. Height said, we have to continuously educate and enroll. And you think by now, don't you get it?
Yeah.
Don't you
Hello.
get it?
That's what I keep saying to folks. They're like, well, I just never knew that Black people were being treated this way by institutions. I said, so.
Don't talk to me about folk being
Breonna
woke
Taylor,
now. You're going to talk to me about folk who are woke
Rodney
now.
King,
Let me hear you.
Emmett Till.
Yeah.
Make it make sense.
Yep.
Why is it taking people so long?
Yeah. And so in those moments, I have to really sit back and I have to take deep breaths, okay? And I have to recognize, okay, we still have to teach.
Yeah.
We still have to enroll because that's still a part of the way that we have to make progress. And I find the young women that I'm so blessed still to have around me, sometimes I have to work doubly hard to get past the anger because there's so much anger now at where we are, you know, and justifiably so. And sometimes, you know, I want to ask for more patience, and it's like, no, enough, enough, enough. And I have to hear that. I have to hear the generational message, okay, that we're tired of being patient.
Yeah.
And we've waited too long as it is for what should be obvious issues that we shouldn't even be fighting about anymore. So yeah, I'm encouraged, but I still have those moments of frustration, right? As we all do. But at the end of the day, I always say every generation has to define for itself what it means to move the needle forward. And when I step back, I am encouraged. And I'm grateful that folk like you are really on the front lines now.
Oh my goodness, you're gonna make me cry.
No, it's true.
I feel like I am often on the back lines, and there are people even younger than myself or the same age who are out there being so creative and thoughtful in ways that I never would. And I think that we are trying to do our best as a generation to honor the fact that we didn't come here alone and we didn't come here by accident. That it was the intentional soul force and willpower of people like you, so many of your peers, people like Dorothy Height, people like Nanny Helen Burroughs, right? People like Fannie Lou Hamer and Ida B. Wells, that we are here because of you.
I'm glad you opened that door, and I know we won't have enough time for this one. I mean, I already know it, but I have to put it out there. I think a part of what's going on inside the family movement right now, okay, it is this sense of, can we really honor the generational legacy that you're speaking of? Because so often I hear our young folk saying, that's old school, you know? We don't want to do it the way you did it, okay? And it's not that we're saying, you got to do it the way we did it, okay?
Of course.
But we want, I think, to feel more of a partnership with the movement now. And if you had to say to me,
I received that,
and my generation, what does partnering, working with, supporting look like for you?
Folks, Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punches! I'm real revolutionary right now.
Support this man, Black Media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America, Roland.
Hey, Black, I love y'all.
All momentum we have now, we
We have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, there's a difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home. You dig?
For me, I will say that I think it is about, first of all, affirmation. I think that as again, inside the family of the movement, as we more willingly expand to recognize the humanity of all Black people and make sure that women are not erased from the narrative, and that our LGBTQ siblings are not erased from the narrative, and our disabled siblings aren't erased from the narrative, and our siblings from across the African diaspora are not erased from the narrative, that we want to make sure that whatever we pick up from moments past includes them and welcomes them. And I know that that's something that you've been incredibly intentional about throughout your life and career. And I think that more young folks feeling that affirmation and support from more of our elders and our mentors will be meaningful, because there are some folks who were hurt. And when there are folks, in your generation who say, I love you and I see you, and we're fighting for all of our freedom, I think that will start to heal some of that. I also think that one of the best lessons that we, if we are smart, and I like to believe that my generation is, that we can gain from you all, is discipline and longevity. That you all were have been continuously so focused not just on moments or bright spots, but that you have been continuously putting your hand to the plow and strategically moving things across a long period of time. Because we know it took us a long time to get to the place where we are, so it's gonna take us a long time to get out of it. And I think learning what it means to grind at this thing over the long haul, that's what we really need to learn it. And the more that you all impart those lessons, the better. Because that's certainly what I'm looking for. But I have the same question for you. What would make you feel partnered with?
Well, what makes me feel that I'm in it with you?
Yeah.
In many ways, is an acknowledgement of what you just said, that you know the history. You didn't play past it.
Yeah.
Okay? You understand that it took pain to be the first. And while we don't necessarily talk about all of those first, okay, there were lessons along the way. So you don't feel discounted in terms of what your experience and what your contributions were. I think the second thing, when you talk about partnership, is to be very clear. I know I can not just give you advice, okay, great, we can all do that, okay, I give it, I know you receive it, okay, but I can also come up with some ideas.
Yeah,
okay?
yeah.
And resources to help funnel where you're going and what you're trying to get done. So if I ask you too many questions, if I penetrate it a little bit more than what you might be comfortable with, it's because I'm really trying to get the understanding so that I can be all in and not just partially there. And then I want you to tell me in very specific ways. In my own family, I do this with my crowd of your generation, Okay, you need to, don't just go off on me. Don't just go off on me.
That's right, that's fair.
Okay, tell me very specifically, what can I do differently? How can I say it differently? Okay? How can you receive what I'm saying in a different way? You know? So sometimes you have to coach me to help me understand that. You know, I digress a minute here, but I go through this so much now in the workforce today, in workplaces today, with generational workers. You know, they don't want to stay long-term with organizations anymore. That was a value for our generation. The more years you put in, hey, you punch that ticket.
It's definitely different now.
But guess what that has led to? Your generation is saying, I'm not trying to stay here 10 years. I really am not. So I want you to develop me. I want you to impart real skills to me. I want to understand very specifically how you're going to coach me, because I want something portable to take to the next situation.
That's right. Or to the thing that I'm building.
You know, so you have to know how you're going to invest very differently with your generation, right? And so for us not to bring that baggage of our history and experience, and for you to tell me quite directly what that looks like. Don't take for granted I get it. Learn how to break it down. Talk to me in real words with real situations.
That's a valuable skill, period. I am so grateful for you. I have so much love for you. I love you, and I love the way that you love us. I'm just so honored that you spent this time with me.
Well,
truly.
I'm honored to be with you because, you know, when you use the term, it's an old African saying, sawabono, I see you. But more importantly than I see you, I am through you. So you just keep doing it. I love you too.